So going from an Olympic tournament or a side of the Olympic tournament where we have no idea who's going to be good and who's going to be not.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the side where we have a pretty decent idea as to who's good and who's not. And that's the women's hockey.
Right.
Canada, USA are, I mean, it's just not even close. And is there anything that you think can be done about that?
Well, I think there's something that has to be done about it.
Yeah.
I see some real warning signs and red flags right now.
Right.
In this game. One of them is that in this tournament, they deliberately made the format that the top 5 teams would be in the same division and the next 5 teams would be in the other division.
Right.
So, I mean, Canada and USA aren't beating up on Denmark and Czechia here, or Russia even. They are. Russia was in their group.
Russia's
but, those teams, or Japan or China, they're not beating up on them. They're beating up on Finland.
Yeah.
They're beating up on teams that are supposed to be the 3rd, 4th, and 5th best teams in the world. And those games they're not competitive.
Yeah.
They're just not.
Yeah.
So to me, and the other thing I think that raises some alarm bells is what's going on with Finland. I mean, you probably could chalk it up to the fact that the coach left Nuoraratu, the goalie, off the team, and it's really thrown that whole thing into disarray.
Right.
So maybe I'll give that to them. That maybe there's a dynamic to that team that's not working right now. But to me, I mean, for them to lose to Switzerland, I mean, that to me is really concerning because they were one of the teams that was going to give Canada and USA a fight in 2019. They were a controversial goal away from winning the gold medal over the US. Yeah. In 2006, Sweden won the silver medal, and now they're fighting to stay in the top 10 teams.
Yeah.
So to me, I think, a lot of this comes from the fact that Rosie DiMano of the Toronto Star wrote a piece the other day saying that women's hockey should be taken out of the tournament because it's not competitive enough. And, the blowback was swift and predictable.
Decisive.
And
yes.
predictable.
Yeah.
But to me, I mean, that's one end of the spectrum. But the other end of the spectrum is no. Everything's fine. Look at all these women who are doing these great things, and look at when Canada plays USA, how exciting it is and everything. To think that there's nothing wrong, to think that that everything is great on the global stage for women's hockey, I think is really, really profoundly dangerous. Because it's not. It's just not. I mean, I watched some of those games, and if you can watch the non-US Canada games and say that is something that's Olympic caliber competition, well, then I mean, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what games you're watching because they're not.
Yeah.
Because they're not. And so it's got to get better. It's got to get better. And the people whose job it is to improve this game at a global level have been negligent in their duties.
Yeah.
They really have. And so what does it? What does it? Okay, well, some think a pro league will do it. I'm not so sure that does it, because if you have a pro league, you're going to have maybe 4, 5, 6, let's say it's a 6-team pro league, right? Where the players are paid and they're paid a living wage and they're treated as pros and they can do that. Okay. So, the vast majority of that league is going to be Canadian and US players with a few others sprinkled in there. So I don't know that helps develop hockey in other countries. It's got to come down to the federations. I mean, in 2019, Sweden had a massive player revolt because they were so upset about how their women players were being treated in comparison to the men.
Right.
And that's Sweden. That's Sweden. Man, that's a social democracy you're talking about, man. Yeah. I mean, if they're doing that in Sweden, what are they doing in Russia and China, and that sort of thing? So to me, it's got to start at home, and these federations have to step up, and they've got to get some domestic leagues going. They've got to get grassroots programs going. They've got to bring in people like Carla McLeod. I can't remember what. Anyways, the former player for Canada who went over to China and coached for a couple of years. They've got to have people going over there and spreading the game and teaching the game and having good grassroots programs because. Olympic sports come and go. So I don't think it's a given that that women's hockey is going to stay in the Olympics forever. Yeah. Although it does give 10 countries 25 female athletes, which really is a positive in terms of the gender equity side of things. Yeah. So that does help. But at some point you got to, it took a long time. It took a long time for the men to do it. Mm-hmm. And it's taken a long time. Look at basketball in Canada. Yeah. And soccer in Canada for that matter. Canadian men were fodder for the longest time, and now they're among the elite countries, right? Yeah. So it takes time, but you've got to see some forward progress. And not only do I not see forward progress, I see a regression. And that's what worries me.
Yeah. So it should be mentioned, you did write more in depth about this on your Substack.
Right.
So again, if that's something that interests you, then check it out at kencampbell.substack.com. And, I think it's funny because you haven't seen my answer to this, but you kind of touched on it and brushed it aside.
Okay.
But I was going to say a true professional league in North America, it provides something to work towards. And here's what I'm going to tell you. I used to canoe for the Bombay Beach Canoe Club.
Okay.
And I competed nationally, and a knee injury knocked me out when I was a midget.
How does a knee injury stop you from paddling a canoe?
You're on one knee the whole time.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So if that knee goes, you're in very bad shape.
Okay.
Yeah. I had issues with my meniscus in that knee.
Okay.
From paddling. But I did know a young woman who's maybe about a year older than me at the time.
Why didn't you just go on the other knee?
No. That's like telling a hockey player to just shoot on the other side. Like it's a natural thing, right?
Yeah, I'm being completely ignorant here. So, yeah. Okay.
You don't know about the most niche sport in the world? So anyways, she was the best canoeer in Canada.
Right.
And she basically just gave it up at 17.
Oh, jeez.
Because there was no Olympics women canoeing.
Right.
There was Olympics women kayaking. And so last year was the first year that last Summer Olympics was the first year that there was Olympics women canoe teams.
Right.
And so, and I saw that and it made me happy to see this, but it also kind of made me sad thinking about this young woman that I grew up with, and we trained together, and we'd go down to Florida in the winters to go and train at some weird trailer park that we'd, rent out and stuff like this, right, with our team. And the point is that there was no goal for her.
Right.
She basically won an age category above her at the Canadian Nationals, and that was as good as it gets.
Right.
And of course, then we're talking about Steve Giles, Adam Van Couverton in terms of for kayak and canoe. They're the tops of the pack. They're the creme de la creme of their generation, right? So Canada was the best, or one of the top countries for canoeing and kayaking, and she won in Canada, and that's about it.
Right.
So as a 17-year-old, she had to turn around and say, well, I guess I'm done now.
Yeah.
And so without a professional league, you've got possibly, I'm assuming, lots of women around the world that are playing hockey at 14, playing hockey at 16, and then just thinking like, do I start getting serious about my degree here? And of course, North America has the NCAA program, so that's a good avenue for women's sports. But around the world, in Finland and Sweden and Russia and China, you're going to be starting to think to yourself, do I start getting more serious about school, or do I continue to work out for 2 hours a day and skate for an hour a day and, and skills coach for 3 hours a week on Saturdays? And there comes a point where it's just a lot of commitment for no possible avenue of success.
Yeah. But are the women in Europe doing those things? Like, I don't know. Maybe they are. Maybe they are getting skills training a couple hours a week or something like that. But to me, that's where you have to, that's where it has to change. Is there has to be that commitment, right?
Right.
And you know what? I'm with you on a pro league, right? Like, there needs to be a pro league. There
really you're not saying that there shouldn't be a pro
There
league.
needs to be a pro league. Okay, so like I'm just spitballing this here, but so if you're going to have a pro league, then maybe you have a North American draft and a European draft, and you have to draft 3 players from every other top hockey country.
Yeah.
And they got to be on your roster, and they got to be regular players who get to play.
Yeah.
So then you get, the best Japanese and the best Chinese and the best Finnish players going up against the Marie-Philippe Poulins and the Hillary Knights. And they're trying to, and they're practicing with them, and they're playing with them, and they're playing against them.
Yeah.
And that's how they get better. And then they go back home to their national teams, and they're better players. And then these girls in these countries have someone to look up to and say, maybe I can do that.
Right. Exactly.
Then that's, I can get on board. I can definitely get on board with that.
It's funny because your idea of doing this 2 separate draft system is exactly the opposite of what they do in Europe, which is that they say you're only allowed to have X amount of not
quotas.
players.
But I would say reverse the quotas.
Yeah.
You have to have so many players. Like, there have to be so many. Like, there's a pool of, what? So what do we have? So Canada and U.S. So then you've got the 8. Let's say you take the 8 top countries in the world.
Yeah.
From there, so you're 3 to 10. You got to take 3 players. So that's 24 players, right? You have 6 teams, so 4 players from those countries have to be on each and every roster.
Yeah.
If they're your 4th line and they don't see a lot of ice time, I'm not sure that helps, but that's what you got to do. That's what you got to do. That's what you got to do. Yeah. Yeah.
And to my point earlier, for the 15-year-old and the 14-year-old, where you're at a time where you now have to decide, am I serious or am I not?
Right.
Because that's the age. You need to be doing it your whole life.
Yeah.
But that's the age where you've got to turn around and say, am I in the gym 10 hours a week?
Yeah.
Am I doing skills coaching? Am I doing whatever? Like I've got my youngest goalie student is 7.
Wow. He's probably better than you too.
No comment. He's more energetic, I'll give you that. My youngest goalie student is 7.
Okay.
And his mom is asking me, she asked me if I think that he can make the NHL. I know. It's bonkers. And I said,
you should just tell her yes, but he has to be on the ice with me every single day for 3 hours, and you have to pay $100 an hour.
Yeah.
And you know what? She'd probably say, okay.
Well, what I told her was that you can tell that he has natural athletic ability. That's all you can tell with a 7-year-old. But do you go into your kid's grade 1 class and say to the teacher, do you think my son could be a brain surgeon? Yeah.
Or like he could be like a brilliant attorney or I don't know.
Well, but this is the thing. And of course, Carey Price didn't start playing ice hockey until he was 12 or 13.
Yeah.
I was a late bloomer athletically myself. I was like picked last in dodgeball at 13. And then by 15, I was starter on the varsity football team.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so if somebody saw me at 7, they'd say, hey, feel free to give it up.
Yeah.
So, and they probably would have saved me a lot of heartache. So do we move on? I think I believe we do. I think we've covered the Olympics.